Welcome to WWDMD, a podcast that is all about peeling back the curtain on what clinicians really think and feel as they work with others. My guests, clinicians, who are also sometimes clients themselves, risk their vulnerability as they publicly share their emotional reactions to their clients, disclose their challenges in doing the work, and reveal their personal backgrounds. I'm Dr. Meyers. I'm a psychotherapist in New York City with 30 years of practice experience, specializing in anxiety and depressive disorders, as well as sibling relationships and family systems. I'm also a professor of social work at Malloy University on Long Island. I see this as a journey of self-reflection for not only our guests, but you, because with each episode, I'm hopeful that you will learn something new about yourself. Please note that any discussion of case details have been modified to protect the privacy of our clients.
What would Dr. Meyers do?
Hey everyone, we are doing another episode as part of the series on sibling abuse. And today the focus is me. I have had many requests from folks over time saying that they wanted to hear my story. Now, I'm not quite sure what that really means in regard to my experiences at the time of experiencing sibling abuse. As you may be familiar with, I have mentioned that I am also a survivor, but I realize I have not shared much specifics about that. And then I wonder if folks also want to know about just life today. I'm not sure, but I asked my friend Lorene Stanwick, who is a fellow survivor, and you might have heard her story on this podcast. She's been on a few times, to I don't want to say conduct this interview, be in conversation with me and lead the conversation. There's been no preparation whatsoever. I have no idea what she wants to talk about or what she's going to ask, but I thought it was time to attempt to bear my vulnerability in the hope that it resonates with folks or provides something of what folks are asking for. And all I can say is, let's see where this goes. So, hey, Lorene.
Hey, good to see you.
And you.
Before we start, the one thing I do want to say is it's an honor. It's an honor, first of all, that you've invited me to be here today, without a doubt. But also that you've done this, that you've started this podcast, that you're having these conversations, and it's always been about the other, and your generosity is large.
Thank you.
And like you've listened to so many people's stories for so many episodes and for your whole life and your work and everything. And so thank you for trusting me, and thank you for doing this for your listeners, because it really does, I think it really does make a difference when we know more about why we're here and how we got here and why now. So why don't we start with now? You said this is the time. So why is now the time?
Great question. Well, I don't know if I know the answer to that. Why now? You know, sometimes, well, as we know, life is a process, and we're constantly processing things, even when we're so-called evolved, right? Or we've done a lot of work on ourselves. I wonder if it has something to do with my relationship with you, right? I met you a couple of years ago at a conference on sibling abuse. We connected. We've been in conversation. We've done the podcast. And I think you expressed your curiosity, or really kind of made the point that it would be helpful or meaningful for people to hear my side of things, my experience of things. It would be interesting to you. And not that I haven't heard that before, but maybe, you've made an impact more than you know in regard to that. And I also feel like I've been struggling with that idea, like, do I want to do this? Why do I want to do this? I don't feel compelled to do this. I mentioned to you, I don't feel that I really live with the angst of this experience anymore. So in a way, I feel removed from it. And maybe in that sense, I don't feel like I have that much to offer. But there's also other reasons. I don't want it to be my identity. I don't want it to be Amy, the survivor of sibling abuse. I am so much more than that. And I've grown so much that, I don't want people to feel sorry for me, or I don't want that just to be the way that people see me. I'm also protective of my privacy. And the first thing I think about is my clients, and having them hear this and what that's going to mean to them. So just a shout out, if any of my clients do listen to this, I hope that you will bring it to our meetings, and let me know that you have listened to it so that we can process it together. But, so I guess there's a lot of reasons for hesitation. And then so why did I decide now? Again, maybe I attribute it to you. I'm also somebody who always pushes myself through vulnerability and the things that I don't want to do. And something that came up for me recently was my memory of teaching for the first time. And I never had a desire to teach, but I think I finally came to a phase in life where I thought I had something to offer. But I was terrified of public speaking, and also didn't want to do it. And then there's something, I think I'm programmed that this is what you do. You push yourself to do things that aren't comfortable in the name of growth, right? Personally and professionally. And so maybe this is one of those experiences.
Wow. Well, I think you had more reasons not to than to in there.
Maybe it's not about number, but about significance, right? I don't know.
Yeah. And what strikes me is your dedication to this issue is so strong that I don't know. And as another survivor, it's like I just feel like the more stories we hear from each other, the more we find our people. You know what I mean? And we are doing that here. You have created that space. So.
Right. And, I guess maybe another piece is I don't want to be hypocritical, right? Like I am asking people to share their vulnerability, but in reality, they want to. I mean, there's a strong desire to. But then, right? I kind of have to, I don't know, right? So anyway, Here I am. Here you are.
So it was enough of an impact in your life that you even did this as your PhD. This is what you researched. This was what your work is.
Yes.
And so I have to assume that to some degree that comes from your own experience and wanting to understand it and go, what the hell happened? Like, why didn't,
Absolutely.
So maybe start there. Maybe start with that's what the first thing you did with it, I'm assuming, is the research. The first big thing you did with it.
Yeah, correct. I mean, the first big thing I did with it was talk about it in therapy. That's the first big thing I did with it. But you're right in terms of like exposure or just diving in. Well, when I got my doctorate and started on the dissertation, I was told by a professor that most people do me search. Right, not research, me search. And we were also told to pick a topic that we could stay with for a lengthy period of time because we were going to be immersed for a while. So one wants it to be interesting. And I guess most people are interested in themselves or find or want to explore things that have impacted them. So, this immediately came to mind, and that's really how, that started. But I will say there was a piece that as a therapist, I was working with people who had this experience, but didn't name it. And were struggling with issues of intimacy. And when I started to explore beyond the parent-child relationship into the nature and quality of sibling relationships, I realized, that this was a bit of a thing. And then I'll add on top of that, having worked in an agency where we do intakes and biopsychosocials, right, to try and learn the entire context of a person. Part of that process is asking and exploring about family relationships, but specifically, again, parent-child relationships. And, people don't explore the sibling relationship. And I knew, of course, from my life experience, how impactful this was. So I thought that it was very important to kind of get the word out.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. And so do you want to start with the impact, or do you want to start with more about your experience?
We can start with anything, but I will say this: when I hear you ask that question about the impact, I think I've talked a lot about that, written about that. That's been on the podcast in terms of me offering just an entire podcast about the impact. And clearly the people that have been on the podcast have talked about the impact in their lives. So I don't want to talk about that because that's already been talked about. So if you're asking about the impact on me, then I say, okay, here we go. Are we looking for that?
Well, that was what I thought that might be a way in, since you were talking about, how you knew how it impacted you,
Yeah.
and taking that to therapy. And so,
yeah, I mean, I think it's impacted me the similar way in which I think it impacts survivors, period. I was that person. I still am that person in some areas, but generally speaking, it has impacted my self-esteem seriously and intensely, right? So I was physically and emotionally abused, and word name calling, for several years during my adolescence, when you're generally not feeling good about yourself anyway, or struggling with that. I was told repetitively and consistently that I was fat, that I was stupid, and that I was ugly. And so, as we do and internalizing that, I believed all of it. I then and for a very long time. So that was really uncomfortable, living in that space, living in that body, living in that mind, right? Like it's really hard. I think it impacted my ability to trust, and what does that mean, right? That's such a broad word, trust. So let me think about how that has played out, right? One, and this is the stuff, it's interesting because this is the stuff that I explored in my research, right? Where did it come from? One, it came from the gaps in literature that wasn't out there. How does it impact one? But also, based on my own experience, I think I wanted to see that other people have the same experience. So what I'm talking about is reflected in my research, right? This idea of difficulty trusting. So I wasn't safe in my home, right? I wasn't protected in my home. Why would I be that way anywhere else, right? Why would I have that experience anywhere else? So relationships weren't safe. And just, because I had that experience with my brother doesn't mean that it was just with men or boys at the time, right? It's with everybody. I am susceptible to feeling vulnerable with all people, feeling less than. And so I don't trust that somebody wants to be friends with me, or that it's genuine, or that it's really, that I have something of value to offer people. So just trust in, I'm not quite sure. It's interesting how to articulate that personally, but just not trust myself really in relationships, and feeling that I can be seen, I can be valued, I can be liked. I mean, you're fat, you're stupid, and you're ugly. You're not very likable and appealing, right? So And I think I wore my vulnerability. And so, maybe it's no coincidence that I was bullied in middle school and a bit in high school, primarily by boys who said I was ugly and were commenting on my looks, right? And maybe it was the way I carried myself that made me vulnerable to that, right? Very insecure. Um, how else? So relationships, right, which is carried into my adulthood in terms of some struggles with intimate relationships that I am still working on, but I think we all work on intimate relationships throughout our lifetime. Um, Friendships, I have very close friends. I am very selective about my friends. I don't like depending on people. And that, makes sense to me because, right, your most trusted peer and then your parents who were there to protect you and you're dependent on didn't come through. So, I have difficulty asking for help. I can do everything by myself. But I have made friends who are so generous and who I do accept help from, but it's very limited and very selective. Um, yeah, I mean, I don't know. Is that satisfying? I want to satisfy, right? So maybe there's still a desire to please. I will tell you that, like, I do find myself, one of the things that I struggle with still now is doing things out of obligation rather than what I want to do, and being true to my needs and my desires and honoring that, because I don't want to disappoint, but I think I also don't want to displease others, because what will happen? Will they end the relationship? Will they end the friendship? Will I hurt them somehow? Will they hurt me? Will they end the friendship? Yeah. Did I just say that? Will they end the friendship? Yeah. Will they be mad at me? Even as simple as that. Yeah.
It's so interesting, what you're saying. I can so relate to all of it.
Hmm.
Every single piece that you're saying, I can so relate to. And so can so many of the other survivors.
I guess that's the idea, right?
Like it's really because, meeting you, you would never know, of course, that struggle. I think meeting me, I think you probably, everybody can see that I'm that raw, but probably not. You know what I mean? Like
Right. You
we,
think that, but
and
but no. And
yeah,
I think
but
that's
also
interesting. Yeah. Go ahead.
you've
Sorry.
done so much work that you have bypassed, not bypassed, that's not the right word. You have overcome so much of that.
I find myself repeatedly saying, and perhaps on this podcast, so apologies if this is worn out, but I really do feel like a completely different person than I was 10, 20 years ago, that's certainly 30 years ago, and that sometimes I don't even recognize myself with the level of confidence I have, with the accomplishments I've, experienced, with the way other people perceive me. Like, there's this dichotomy, and I relate to what you're saying now. I failed to mention my students when I said, who is going to hear this, right? My students, I think, maybe good that they'll hear this. I know that they have wanted another side of me. They've wanted, I think, to see what you're saying most people don't see. And I have struggled with this dichotomy of them seeing me as somebody who's intimidating. Like you say, you would never know, right? I mean, I don't wear this stuff necessarily on my sleeve, yet in my friendships, when we have conversations, I'm constantly like questioning certain things about myself or my processes, or should I be doing this, or what's the right thing, right? So some of that certainly still lives in me, right? The doubt, you know, how I want to come across. So I think it's interesting that this idea of, like, you would never know it. Would you? Wouldn't you? Who? Context, of course. And I'm not trying to defend against it, at least consciously. I'm sure I do, right? I don't want people to see me as vulnerable. But I do want to be softer. I do want to feel approachable. I don't like the idea that people are intimidated by me. I've learned that I think that means, because I've talked to my students about this, that means respect me from their angle, right? That they hold me in high regard. And so that's nice. I mean, I accept that, but I don't want whatever intimidated means to me, that means threatened by. That I don't, you know, and that
Mhm.
bothers me.
Yeah, but don't forget everybody's also coming from their place,
Right, right,
right? Like I for most of my life, everybody was on a pedestal.
right,
So many people were intimidating, which wasn't about them. It was about me. So,
right,
don't forget that
right,
it isn't that you
right,
are an intimidating, threatening kind of person. It's that's where they're coming from too.
right, right,
Yeah. Yeah,
right,
yeah.
right. See, the struggle is real, right? Or the struggle continues. It's still
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
Right.
So you have one brother. Is
I
that
do. One and
it's
only.
just what's the family? Do you want to your family makeup? Is he older?
So he's 2 years older.
Uh-huh.
Um, we were in an intact, isn't that an interesting terminology? Intact household, in regard to my parents were together for 57 years, until my mother passed. So in that, it's not like we were from a divorced family. Yeah, intact. That's kind of interesting. That just
It's
hit
a
me.
weird word, isn't
Well,
it?
ironic, isn't it? Yes.
Yeah. And
That,
so when do you feel that the abusiveness started? When the abuse started? Was it
yeah.
from when
So we
you were
we
young or
moved we moved from Riverdale, New York, which is in the Bronx, to Long Island when I was 12 years old, going into sixth grade. And my memory is that that's when it started. So it's really curious to me because I know my parents have struggled with what was going on for him at that time, like what created this, right? And I'm not, no one's really known, no one's aware, but maybe the move is significant enough in making that transition, or maybe he was bullied. He was kind of short in stature at that time for his age. Don't know, don't know, what created that. I mean, I also think that there are family dynamics that created that and how he felt about himself and had nobody to displace that on except the next vulnerable target, right?
Mm. So it started when you said around 12,
Yeah,
going to
yeah,
grade six,
yes.
and would he have been starting high school?
So I was going into sixth and he was going into eighth, so junior high.
Going into eight,
Mm-hmm.
junior high. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, so I can see a move would do that. I can see trying to make new friends at that age would be hard.
Mm-hmm.
So do you want to talk about what kinds of things he did or
Well, I shared the emotional part. I mean, that was
yeah,
really,
yeah.
a big piece. But there was physical moments when we had arguments where he would throw aerosol cans at me. And I think I was in another conversation with you trying to explain that there's like a few memories that are very intense, but I don't have like a billion incidents to choose from. So like I remember him, pushing me down. So he was on top of me. I was laying flat on my back, and he would push himself up and come down on my chest with his knees.
Mm,
Um, I remember many incidents of forcing his way into my bedroom and putting a hole in the wall from the doorknob hitting the wall, like with that such force. I actually remember being on my bedroom floor again with him on top of me, hitting my head against the floor. Um, and I remember us being thrown out of our house because we were out of control. And then I would be out of the house with him where he would get very aggressive. And I remember like him punching my arm like a million times in a row. Yeah, that kind of that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah, yeah. And
And
it
then I
went
think
on.
I just froze and thought, oh, I really hope my niece and nephew, who I know don't listen to my podcast, but I certainly don't want to hurt them, and I don't want to hurt my brother and anybody that would be somewhat affected by this, by hearing it or by just knowing that it's out there. So when I think about intention, in doing this and giving this level of detail, um, feeling apologetic, interestingly, as you have talked about yourself. So anyway, that just gave me pause. Like, wow, ooh, that was just very like intense sounding. And I guess it
Mhm.
was intense. I mean,
It
experiencing it,
was
it was
intense.
intense.
It was intense.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
on top of that, the emotional stuff, which never ends, I'm sure, it just keeps going. So many people, it still is going in their adulthood.
Right. Well, it's not
Yeah,
for me because we're not in contact anymore.
yeah,
Um, right, but that's a whole nother piece.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Wow. I can, you alluded to this, but it's one thing to tell people personally. It is another thing to put it out there publicly, and I understand how hard that is.
Well, you
And
did it.
yeah, well, and there's the I guess I just want to reiterate that neither of us want to hurt our siblings. Like, we're not here in the business of hurting them. And I think we've both done enough therapy and enough of our own work that this isn't about revenge, and this isn't about getting them back, and this isn't about any of that. It's about, this is what has happened, and this is what the impact can be. And it hurts, and it has a lifelong impact. And people need to know that. And the way we learn that is through stories, through hearing
Mm-mm.
other people's stories. It's what makes it real for us.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. And as you're speaking, I'm thinking about the one thing I think that still really, digs into me is that, and then I'm thinking, why do I care? Right. But anyway, my brother, I know to this day, and certainly the last time we were in contact, which is, I think, is 5 or 6 years ago, still believes that my anger towards him is about what happened when we were kids and or adolescence, right? During this, that I'm holding a grudge. And I really feel like I have processed that enough to not feel that way. Like I said, kind of at the beginning, I don't feel like I walk around with this anymore. I mean, does it still resonate? And you can see in our conversation the ways it's still resonating, but the pain of it isn't intense at all. So I don't hold a grudge because we were able to, into our adult life, although still having conflict, um, get to a place where we were peers, where he could share with me, the end of his marriage, and I felt very supportive, and I felt for him and wanted to be there for him on some level. But then it continued, right? The way he would speak to me, and not necessarily still name calling me, but really knowing how to make me feel incredibly little. And that I realize as an adult, I don't have to not participate in or be a part of anymore. I have a choice now that we don't have when we're children or adolescents. And I chose me. I often talk about this idea of self-preservation, and I'm really, really sorry that that pains him because I know that he has spoken a lot in our adult years about wanting to be friends. And so, in a way, I feel like I'm doing something to him now, right? I am harming him. I am hurting him, but I have to choose me. Again, out of obligation, I can't do what somebody else needs from me or wants me to be. But it still, perhaps on some level, pains me that this is how he sees it, that I can't get over the past, when in reality, it's that it still goes on, and
Mhm.
and and that's not okay.
But it's easier for him to keep blaming the past.
I guess so. I guess
easier
so.
for him to just say, oh, she's still stuck in that.
Mhm.
It's hers.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
Makes me wonder if, you know, the research shows that most people don't ever apologize and don't ever acknowledge what they've done and the truth of it.
Mhm.
Um, if he were to,
Well, the truth is, I think he has in the best way he can,
oh,
which is contradicted by this belief system he has that I'm still holding on or harboring, right, the past. But I think it was when I was in my 20s and I was in um, graduate school, I would come home often to my parents and say, like, where were you in this? And what happened this? And I would confront them. And I have to say, I really appreciate that they did the best they could with trying to help me process that. And so I might have had a conversation or two with my brother in confronting him or talking about it. And I remember he got very angry and said, and I don't know if he said, I'm sorry. I'm going to assume he did, but undid it with, what do you want me to do now? Like really angrily, right? Like angry that I, again, was holding on to this. And at that time, I was holding on to it because I was deep in the therapy process of exploring it and processing it. And I was. But so that's kind of, that. And so when you say, what if he does or did now? That's I can't live with what ifs maybe or
yeah. Who knows?
I don't know, right? Yeah, like who
Yeah.
knows? Who
Yeah. Who
knows?
knows?
But the behavior would have to change. You can apologize, but if you're still, not able to manage your anger or, you know, I it undoes an
Yeah.
apology, doesn't it?
Yeah. 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 I'm sorry, but
Right, right,
yeah, I
right.
got one of those too.
Right, which he
Yeah.
says is often,
Yeah.
it takes two, and it's like, oh, okay, it takes
Yeah.
two. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what to say to that. Arguments do
Yeah.
take two, but this isn't arguing. This is abuse.
Yeah. And when did you recognize that? Like, when did you recognize that it wasn't just, oh, we're fighting like all other brothers and sisters do? Did you always, we've talked about this a little bit, I think, but I think you always knew that it was beyond normal, right? What he was.
Yeah, March 31st, 1995. No, I'm just kidding. I don't, I don't know. When did that happen? That is something that we have talked about because I remember I found it remarkable, right? And you helped me understand that a lot of people don't recognize it. And I've, now intellectualized that through my research too, with like, society hasn't given it a name and there's no validation and all of that. So it's understandable why people wouldn't understand it or that's their norm. So I can't tell you, how did I know? How did I know? Because it was so painful and I knew it shouldn't be like this. And because I, had friends where I saw their family dynamics and envied it and, took refuge in their homes and
Right,
knew it
right.
didn't have to be like this. Why I had that, I don't know if it's insight or exposure or and other people hadn't. I don't know. Very interesting, very curious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I hear lots of stories on both sides. Like, I always knew it was wrong, and I went to my parents, and they didn't do anything about it. So I guess I was just SOL. And other people who were like, I mean, from like me, I had no idea it wasn't normal until somebody used the word abuse.
Yeah.
And yeah, like,
And I wonder
yeah.
how that plays out, right? That's really
Well,
interesting. Somebody who did know early on and somebody who never
well,
knew.
you know what just occurred to me though is, for you, it didn't start until you were older.
Right, right.
I
We
bet
talked about
that's a key.
right. I think
Yeah,
so.
because your sense of who you are was already really, as by 12 you got a lot under your belt,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
who you are as a person, and the good, the bad, all of it, but you have a sense of self, an identity a
Oof.
little bit stronger.
Yeah, that's really good point.
Yeah.
And then I wonder, like, wow, well, what does that do when you had a decent relationship and then it turns, right? And what is the impact of that versus that's all you knew, but from such a young age? I mean, that's traumatic, you know? It's just different trauma, very, very different,
Yeah,
but
it's a different, because what strikes me as if it happens later, then you're always grappling for what was before. Like you're always, you
Mhm.
have this good brother. He wasn't like this before. So he's going to come back. Like I wonder if there was an element of that, of
I'm not
maybe he'll be
conscious
nice again.
of that.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. I don't know if it's the maybe he'll be right. Maybe the whole relationship will turn. I think it was too far gone. Although the moments right in between where there was calm, or I don't have memories of that, right? But and I wonder if that leads to the intensification of the betrayal because you never know when it's going to come, right? You never
Yeah.
know, so you can't protect yourself from it. Like what set it off? What created this? And but that imbalance of it's not all the time, always, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And then naturally being a somebody who wants to make sure everything's okay and everybody's okay, um, then you'd be probably doing everything you can to dance as fast as you can to make him okay too, right? Was some of that there then? Like giving generosity in taking it because you don't want to rock the boat. You don't want to.
Another interesting point. You're full of them. That's why you're here. Uh, not
I can be
aware of
way
that.
off on them.
No, I'm not aware of trying to please him. I'm
Mm,
aware of fighting back. I'm aware of doing everything I could to protect myself, but to
yeah,
no avail. I mean, he might have been small in stature for his age, but he was stronger than me.
yeah,
And the more I fought back, I think the more it did incite rage. Um, but I never stopped. And I never stopped, like demanding help from my parents. To no end. But I mean, that was another, piece that resonates very deeply is my parents coming home from work because this would often happen in that time period between coming home from school and then coming home from work. And at that point, he was pretty calm because he had, gotten out, displaced whatever aggression he needed to, and he would be up in his room very quiet. And I would be hysterical, when my parents walked through the door, and their response to me was like, calm down. Can we just like come in the door and put our stuff down? And I wasn't literally saying no you can't, but my behavior was no you can't because you have no idea what just went on and what I experienced. And so I am demanding hysterically their attention. And so it would escalate into where I would be punished or I would be chased around the kitchen table, to literally physically get a hold of me to like throw me in my room. Right. So, yeah, what a helpless, powerless feeling.
wow,
Um, yeah. And then, as I said, sometimes getting thrown out of the house with him. How that happened, I don't know, that he was right pulled out as well. So there was some recognition that it's not just me being a pain in the ass, it was, him. But that certainly wasn't helpful. Right.
yeah, wow. So you hear so often that kids don't tell their parents just because we naturally don't tell on those who are hurting us, and again, all that's what most of the research says, right? Is we don't tell. And I know I was interviewed once and that was asked, and I was like, I kind of felt, oh, what was wrong with it was early days of me uncovering this, and I kind of felt like, what's the matter with me that I didn't tell anyone? And then learned that that's really normal. really learned it. For you, you were telling and telling and telling, and nothing changed.
I was telling and telling and telling my parents.
Yeah.
Okay, so yes, right? And then, right, because as you were saying that, I'm thinking, ooh, who else could I have told? Right?
But
And
everybody says, like, if you can tell your parents, great. Like you got to tell somebody. You got to tell somebody. Tell your parents they should do something about it. And
I don't know if I would recommend even now telling parents as the first point of entry. I mean, I would, a trusted mentor, yeah, an adult, a parent's friend. I mean, a friend's parent. Yeah, that's interesting. I want to think that through. So yes, you can tell your parents, but how damaging if they don't respond,
well,
right?
yeah, that's the thing.
And we hear that in regard to like sexual abuse, whether it's from a sibling or an adult, right? We hear that the parent often becomes so protective of the perpetrator because it's usually their husband or their partner, right? Or their other child, and they can't hear it. Like it's just too painful. And maybe that's what was happening here. I don't know. I think my parents were aware that my brother was out of control and they did not know how to manage him. And I don't know, what their psyche was in terms of trying to tune that out or they took me for therapy, right? They knew I needed help. But I don't know. I think they said later in the life when I also asked, well, why don't you take him, that he resisted. But he was a child, he was a child. So, or an adolescent. I don't know. I don't know. It's very, yeah, I don't have all the answers.
Yeah. But it's really interesting that on some level they heard you because they took you to seek help.
Yes. Or, as it gets interpreted, I was the source of a problem,
Yeah.
right? I was this hysterical kid who was problemed and problematic. Right?
Mm.
Yeah.
So it seems like lesson for the parents is the problem can be is problemed. It's like you didn't just you weren't hysterical for no reason.
Right. But I also think, now as a psychotherapist, this is a symptom of a faulty family dynamic, and
Yeah.
that the parents certainly should seek treatment, if not to consider how they maybe unconsciously created this or contributed to it, but need to respond to it.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily placing blame on parents, but clearly you have a problem in your household and you're the authority and you're, the hierarchy, and you need to get some tools and help with figuring out how to protect your child.
Yeah. I hope everyone hears that really clearly.
Mhm.
Because
And
it is parents' responsibility, no matter how hard it is.
yeah,
We've taken that on as a role in life, and so we got to do it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Painful stuff for
Yeah.
everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. And especially like, I know certainly in my parents' generation, people weren't going to therapy.
Right.
It was really hidden behind closed doors,
Right.
everything back.
But I also think
So,
that there's a sense of shame for the parents, right? One, to have children who behave like this, but two, if there's any introspection whatsoever, is, you know, how do I have a family like this? Again, how did I contribute to this?
yeah. Yeah. Do you think it's just people are just too afraid of what might come up? I mean, this is a whole nother conversation of why people don't go to therapy
Well,
and
that's
why people
exactly
don't
that
want to.
was my
Yeah.
response going to be. Exactly. All right. All
Yeah.
right. No matter what we're talking about, pain
Yeah.
is pain. Pain is called pain for a reason. Uh,
Yeah.
People don't want to. It's very uncomfortable, and
Yeah.
to face it takes a lot of vulnerability and a lot of courage and a lot of strength.
Yeah. But there is another side. There is out the other end, right?
I like to think so.
Yeah.
I'd like to think so. I mean, I've worked with people where I've seen that. I hope that I am an example of that. I can say with confidence, I like who I am. I can say with confidence, I'm not fat, although I have my days where I like to lose a little bit more weight, and my friends think I'm ridiculous. I do think that I'm intelligent, and I struggled with defining that for a very long time. What does intelligence really mean? Um, I think that I am attractive, which I never could have even said because, well, what if people think I'm not? Who are you to think that you are? Right? Well, sorry, that's what I think. And that feels pretty damn good.
Mm,
I think I have the ability to relate well to others. I think that I have some really deep, meaningful relationships. I think that I engage people well. And I think that I've been pretty successful in my career. So I have a lot to be proud of. And yeah, and I hope that that gives people hope. I have worked on myself for a very long time. I was in therapy for many, many years. I stopped probably for 10 years and re-entered therapy probably about, I don't know, 4 months ago or so, because there are things I want to fine tune. Um, um, yeah, and there's no shame in that game. But um, yeah, I don't know what else to say really about that. I hope that's enough.
mm, mm. I'm. It, it's so interesting to me because I spent so much of my life being unworthy and not good enough, and everybody else is better than me, and the fat, ugly, stupid stuff. All of that. Not to take that or anything, but just understanding how damaging that can be, and how deeply damaging it can be,
Yeah.
and seeing how much work you've done to overcome it, knowing how much work I've done to overcome it. And it's like people people out there in the podcast sphere, there is hope. We do get better, and we aren't doing it for revenge. We're doing it because we have to. I think, like, we have to.
Well, what does that mean?
Well, I didn't want to be sick anymore. I
Mm.
didn't want to be hating myself anymore. I knew that that
Mm.
wasn't how I was supposed to live my life.
Well, how about you
And
deserve that? Like you deserve that, right? To feel better. You don't have to lead the life that was crafted for you.
right. Yeah. Yeah.
And I
So,
think you share very deeply the feeling of wanting to have people who have had this experience feel better, be seen, right? Like we see you, we acknowledge you and your pain and your strengths, and there is hope and there's help out there. And you don't have to just accept or give up that you are going to live the rest of your life in that mental place.
right. Yeah. And you're not alone. I think it's really,
Definitely.
really important, these conversations, so that people really know that they're not alone. Like, it's meant so much to me, to our friendship developing. Um, because other people don't really get the nuances and the depth of how hard it can be to try and be dealing with this sort of abuse that nobody talks about.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So here we are. Our stories are out there.
Yeah, and I want to say thanks for the push, really, because I think I don't have any regret about this. I feel confident to put it out there. And I think that has a lot to do with who you are, your style, your presence, your ability to engage, and giving me confidence to do this. So thank you very
Mm,
much, Lorene.
mm. My pleasure. My honor. My
Oh,
honors, truly.
oh,
Really.
thank
Really,
you.
really.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Sibling abuse is real. It's important. If you're a professional or parent, keep your antenna up. If you're a victim or survivor, you are important. You matter. If you want help, tell a school social worker or mental health professional or your physician. To learn more, you can find my published articles on my website at amymyersphd.org. That's amymyersphd.org. amymyersphd.org. Thanks for listening. I really do appreciate it. If you like what you heard, please consider leaving a rating and review on your podcast platform, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss my next episode. If you're struggling with clients, I'm happy to consult or provide supervision. Consultations are also available for any person listening. If you're struggling with sibling abuse, you may want to join my sibling abuse workshops. I'm open to feedback on topics you'd like to hear or questions, so feel free to email me at drmyerspod@gmail.com. You may be interested as well in checking out my blogs on my website at amymyersphd.org.
I've got some problems, yeah, I've got some questions. I need some help, point me in any direction. Clinical guidance is what I need to help me become who I'm meant to be. I've been searching for a teacher, another point of view. And I've been asking myself, what would Dr. Meyers do?